welcome to the evening service of Immanuel Baptist Church. We'll be singing song number 125, I Am His and He Is Mine.
To Acts chapter 1. Acts chapter 1. And I'm not going to be long on this. I just wanted to point out, why do we go on foreign missions? Why do we do this? Why as a church are we going to do this? And it's because it's part of fulfilling the Great Commission. And so if you look with me, Acts chapter 1, verse 8. But ye shall receive power. After that the Holy Ghost is come upon you, and ye shall be witnesses unto me both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and in Samaria and unto the uttermost part of the earth. And when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And so what we have here in this little portion of Acts is Jesus' last command to his followers. The command to go into all the world preaching the gospel. And he says that you shall receive power. After that, after the Holy Ghost has come upon you, the Holy Ghost will give you the power, and in that power you will go out you'll go to Jerusalem, you'll go to Judea, you'll go to Samaria, and then to the uttermost parts of the earth, sharing the gospel of Christ. And that has been part of the Christian mission ever since, right? Because here we are. Alaska's got to be the uttermost parts of the earth if you're comparing it to Jerusalem, right? Here we are, followers of Jesus Christ, sharing the gospel with others, having a ministry here in the uttermost parts of the earth. But also here we see a pattern that would be established for all churches after that. We see they start in their local city, right there in Jerusalem. And from Jerusalem, after they've ministered in Jerusalem and shared that gospel with the Jews, remember it's the Jews first and then the Greek. They go to Judea, the surrounding area, and then they go to Samaria, where you've got your local foreigners. But then after that, they go to the Gentiles, the uttermost parts of the earth. And we might think at first, all right, well, that was just a one-time thing, right? But later on in Acts, we find various churches doing the same thing. We see Paul being sent out of what church? Not the church of Jerusalem, but Paul and Barnabas were sent out of the church in Antioch. The church in Antioch saw the need to reach the uttermost parts of the earth, and they sent out missionaries to reach the uttermost parts of the earth. And part of the church's responsibility is to provide opportunities for believers to grow, to learn, to be equipped for ministry, but also opportunities to minister, right? Opportunities to minister to the local Jerusalem and the surrounding area and our local foreigners, but also opportunities to minister to what to us is the uttermost parts of the earth. And so in having this missions trip that we are organizing, we are offering you the opportunity to go to the uttermost parts of the earth and share the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ, just as the church has done for centuries. And many churches have followed this model, and we hope that this will help inspire some of you, even if you go on this trip and don't feel called to the mission field, but seeing how God works in foreign countries and how we are part of something bigger than just here in Alaska is very valuable. It sticks with you. You really realize what it means to be a part of the body of Christ. And even if you don't go on this trip, but are just simply blessed by seeing this presentation or hearing the stories of whoever comes back from this trip and knowing that you had a part in supporting ministries in the uttermost parts of the earth, this is an opportunity for you too, even if you don't go on this trip, to be a part of fulfilling the Great Commission. And so that's all I had to share as far as a devotional. And if our slideshow is ready, we will begin. Let's begin. Yes. I'll try to stay out of the way because I know you didn't come here to see me. But do we have the clicker for? Okay. But the information of the trip itself is on these little half sheets in the back, just so you have a point of reference. The dates for this trip are going to be Thursday, September 28th through Wednesday, October 11th. And that way we're trying to give some buffer time we're both our church and the church in Honduras are having an October Bible conference, so that gives a little buffer time between this trip and the Bible conference, and also helps with their schedule there in Honduras. But alrighty, it worked. But this is the title slide. Alrighty, so Honduras is a Central American country with a population of 9.5 million people. The language is Spanish, and most people identify nominally as Catholic. There is a fairly large Pentecostal presence. However, Pentecostals in Honduras are not the same as Pentecostals you would find here. They tend to be even a little bit more fringe. They tend to be a little bit heretical, to put it lightly. So there's a lot of need for ministry there, because there's just a lot of emptiness or false teachings. But so the capital there at Tegucigalpa, the ministry of the Hodges is about an hour south of there. So the city, Tegucigalpa, is located in a low mountain range that runs through the country. The area where the Hodges minister is very mountainous. And it's not quite our mountains. Our mountains are huge, massive, and impressive with sheer drops, and then you've got these flat plains where everybody lives in. In Honduras, where we will be going, everything is up or down. And all of the houses are built on the hillside, and you don't want to live in the low points because that's where all the water goes in the rainy season. So everything is up or down. But Honduras has coasts on both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, and their largest city and port is right about up here, San Pedro Sula. The climate for Honduras. Honduras is a temperate to subtropical climate. And so, I meant to tell you this at the beginning. I'm going to give you information about Honduras itself, and then I'm going to give you information about the ministries that are there, and then some of the opportunities that we're going to see. So there you know my outline. All right, so climate. Climate in Honduras is temperate to subtropical. It has mountains, plains, and jungles, but most of the ministry we would be doing would be in the mountains. There are two seasons, basically, rainy season and dry season. And so it's either wet or it's dry. And so I've only been there in the dry seasons, going there in December, January. It's very dry, cooler temperatures, cooler meaning like 60s, 50s, and 60s, very comfortable to me. It looks kind of like the Sahara. You can see, they've got these cool little trees that look like the Sahara, and these are the mountains that are all up and down. But then in the wet season, it's supposed to be like a jungle there. I've not been there in the wet season, but October is the last month before the dry season begins, so it shouldn't be too wet and it shouldn't be too dry. At least that's what I'm hoping. The wildlife. Honduras is home to a large variety of small animals. I was told there are large animals there too, but as soon as someone sees them, they shoot them and eat them. So I didn't see anything bigger than the small snakes and the birds there. But they've got a large variety of very beautiful birds. They've got a variety of snakes. All the snakes that I saw while I was there were dead. Because that's one of the other things. They seem to, anytime they encounter wildlife they don't like or that they could eat, that's what happens. Anyways, so the wildlife, beautiful jungles and forests, and we did quite a bit of hiking. I was there for an extended trip, so we were able to do quite a bit of hiking. living conditions. There's a lot of disparity in the living conditions of Honduras. Some people live in beautiful, rich, decorative houses. Like you see it and you're like, this is impressive. It's huge. It's all painted. They tile the outside, and they have these huge fences that go around, and all these guard dogs and stuff. And you know that somebody very wealthy, probably someone who's in politics or in the drug business, probably lives there. And then you see people who live in very poor conditions. Most of Hondurans live below the poverty line. And the poverty line in Honduras, I think, is a lower standard than here in America. They have very little. We visited lots of places, lots of houses, lots of people while we were there. Hondurans are very receptive. You walk up to them and tell you, "Oh, I'm an American. Can I talk with you?" And they'll invite you in. They'll offer you food. They're very open and welcoming, even though they have very little. Most of the people, there are lots of people who live in mud brick houses with a tin roof, or the government helps out a lot with housing, creating lots of like concrete houses that have a dirt floor and a tin roof, and people live in there, and that's all they have. Though you'll walk in and maybe they'll have a hammock, maybe they'll have a couple pieces of furniture, but they live with very little. And so you see beautiful mansions, and you'll see people living in the most abject poverty that you can imagine. So it's unfortunately, because they live below the poverty line, and there's a lot of violence due to the gangs. A lot of Hondurans try to escape to America. For a while, Hondurans were the largest people group coming across the border. More than Mexicans, more than anybody else, it was Hondurans. And even today, Hondurans are still one of the largest people groups coming across the border, because most of them live below the poverty line, and they want to escape that. And unfortunately, living with so little has made many of them very materialistic. They think that if they can get to America and they have money and are in a good situation, that all their problems will go away. And unfortunately, they bring a lot of problems with them. Their problems don't go away. In fact, many of them create problems for themselves by abandoning their families, running off to America, and then they get deported back, and they lost all the money that they spent to get to America, and they come back, and their family is not happy with them for having left them, and they're just worse off than they were to begin with. They can't escape their problems. They live with this burden of poverty, and they think that things and money will give them relief, but the fact is that things and money can't give you relief. They can't relieve the burden of your soul. That's one of the reasons why we need to bring the gospel to Honduras, because they search for what will make them happy, what will relieve this burden, and they look for it in things and in money and looking stylish and having great clothes. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. I've seen some of them. I watched this guy come out of his mud hut, and he's got stylish jeans, and he's got his little gold chain and these really nice sneakers, and his hair is all slicked back and everything. I mean, like he walked out of some sort of Latin American TV show, but he's living in the mud hut because that's what his focus is. He wants to project wealth. He wants to project the idea of, I'm doing good, because they're caught up with a lot of materialism, and that becomes their focus. It becomes their God, and really only Jesus can free them from the bondage that they feel. And so that's one of the reasons why we need to bring the gospel to Honduras, is because they can't find relief in anything that the world has to offer. Transportation. Oh, not that one. There we go. Transportation. The roads in Honduras are incredibly hectic. They're squiggly lines weaving around all of these mountain and hills, and they're up and they're down and they're going around everything that they can't go up and down over. It's just, and it seems like there's no rules on the road. they beep and they honk and they try to pass you on a blind curve, and you're like, what's going on? But somehow, miraculously, they seem to do just fine. I mean, I would never drive there, but that's okay. The missionary is just as good as the Hondurans at driving. When I was there, my friend Joseph, I says, man, Hondurans are pretty bad drivers. He said, no, they're not. They're great drivers. They're amazing drivers. If they weren't great, amazing drivers, they would all be dead. Okay, that's one way to look at it. But another thing is they have a very low speed limit. Like, you know, their fast traffic is probably 50, 55 miles per hour. Most of it is probably 45 miles per hour or slower, partly because they're constantly creating traffic jams for themselves, but they give a really low speed limit anyways. And so as a result, most of the accidents that happen really aren't all that bad because they're not traveling very fast anyways. So I was surprised at actually how safe it is to drive around in all of those hectic conditions, but you know, the Lord is also really good. You know, we took a ride in that truck. I rode in the back on top of all the luggage for 6 hours, driving from one end of Honduras to the other. We were going from one mission station to another, and it was fun. A lot of fresh air, great ride. There's also all of these little three-wheeled taxis that are everywhere. A little beep, they beep, and they have like a top speed of 35 miles per hour, and it doesn't cost much to get a ride, so people frequently travel on those or on motorcycles. But transportation, you know, the church itself has several buses. They do a lot of transportation with the church with these buses that they have, and then they have some large vans, and their drivers are pretty good drivers. I'm quite impressed. But you know, it's quite an experience. It's a little intimidating at first, and then you realize that there's some sort of like they've got a logic to the way they do all of this. So I really enjoyed riding with Hondurans. Great people. The Hondurans really, they are likable, lovable people. You walk in and you don't know them, you don't even know their language, and they're welcoming. They're excited to see you. They want to include you in everything that they do. They like Americans there. And they want to practice. Everybody wants to practice their English, and they want to teach you some sort of Spanish word, or they all teach you the same words, but that's beside the point. They want to get connected. They want to include you. They like, if you're an American, you're instantly liked there. They're very welcoming, very accepting, and very including, despite having very little themselves. What little they have is their community, and they are ready and willing to incorporate you into the community. By the way, in Honduras, you are not from America. If you say that you are from America, they'll be like, which country in America? Because to the Hondurans, you know, America is the continent, and they're Americans too. So if you go to Honduras, you are from the United States, and the Estados Unidos, and they consider themselves Americans. So if you say you're an American, they will say, I'm an American too. But really, I enjoy their spirits. They really, they're inclusive. You see a bunch of them playing soccer, and then be like, hey, come join us. You have no clue what they're saying. You're not even sure if you're on you know what team you're on, because they all wear different uniforms usually. But you get to have fun. Good food. I really enjoyed the food in Honduras. It was pretty much all good, except for these little green donuts. I'm still not sure what they were, but they did not taste like American donuts. Aside from that, I really enjoyed Honduran food. Some things to consider is they cook all of their food, all chicken, with the bone in. So if you get a tamale, you don't just gobble it down, because you're probably going to find a bone in there. So you take your time, you eat little pieces at a time, but it's great food. If you have a weak stomach, pass on the homemade cheese. And if you ask for butter in Mexican Spanish, you're going to get sour cream. But with those things in mind, Hondurans, they have really good food, really good cuisine. They're not big on spicy food, so if you like mild Hispanic food, this is the place to go. And the food is pretty cheap. This was 5 or 6 years ago, but when I bought that plate of food there, you got that, the brat and a big slice of beef and a pile of plantain and fried rice, a tortilla, and a soda, all for under $10. I think it was like $8. And it was all really good. I enjoyed the food there. And then probably the thing that I get asked about the most is crime and security. Isn't Honduras a dangerous place to go? Well, if you consult the U.S. Travel Advisory, they will tell you to reconsider any travel to Honduras. Unfortunately, Honduras is a high crime country, and as you can see in these pictures, every place has, in the big cities, every place has armed guards. McDonald's has a guy with a shotgun sitting outside. He's the security for McDonald's. You don't see that ever in the United States. You would have a heart attack if you did, but there, they've got soldiers and they've got armed guards everywhere in the big city. As soon as you leave the big city, all that ends. Like, you leave the city and all of a sudden you stop seeing guns all over the place. In the city, guns everywhere. You leave the city, no guns. It's just most of the crime, most of the violence is centered in the two large cities of Tegucigalpa and San Pedro Sula. When I was in Honduras, it was actually more dangerous than it is considered today. When I was in Honduras 5 years ago, their two big cities were in the top 10 of the most dangerous cities you could possibly visit. And in my entire time there, I never felt like I was in danger. Never felt insecure, never felt like there was a problem. You don't want to go there at night, obviously, but during the day, everybody can see everything, and there's always somebody with a gun in sight, and so you really just don't, there was no worry. It was surprisingly felt secure, even though it was supposed to be some of the most dangerous cities in the world. Today, the cities of Baltimore and St. Louis have more violent crimes than Tegucigalpa and San Pedro Sula. So crime in Honduras has gone down. They had a president who was tough on violent crimes. He was not tough on other crimes, and that's why he's in jail now. But he was tough on violent crimes and really reduced the crime rate in Honduras. So Honduras, yes, is a high crime country, but the violence is not like Mexico. In Mexico, you don't know what's going to happen when you cross the border. But in Honduras, if you stay away from the gangs and you stay away from the cartels, you're probably also going to stay away from most of the violence. And that's a lot easier to do in Honduras than in Mexico, because in Mexico, the cartels have a finger in everything, and in Honduras, they just stick to their business. They extort local businesses and they do drugs. If you're not a local business and you're not doing drugs, you're not going to have a problem with the cartels or the gangs. And the missionaries, they know how to avoid these things. Theft, on the other hand, is rampant in Honduras. When you're in Honduras, you need to keep an eye on your stuff. Like I said, when I was there, I never felt in danger, ever, once, not once did I ever feel in danger. At the same time, I had to keep a close eye on my stuff because, like I said, they have very little. They're all below the poverty line, and they have a very materialistic mindset, many of them, and even the best of them are going to be tempted to take something that they don't have. And so you got to keep an eye on your stuff when you go. But while crime can be concerning, bring the gospel to Honduras will help reduce crime. Right? That's one of the reasons why the gospel needs to go to Honduras is because it will help with these problems. And so and like I said, God takes care of you on these kinds of trips. God is in the details of these kinds of things. When I went there the second time, it was an election year. There were violent protests. There were people getting shot in the streets and being drug away, and they were burning tires. And when we flew in the one day that the airport was open, the entire 2 weeks. We happened to land just on the one day that it was open. Wow, what a coincidence. And then when we hopped in the truck, we drove past all these piles of burning tires. And the missionary told us there was huge protests going on here when we drove in, but everything was gone. They were just scooping the trash off to the side of the street. And when we went north, we had been hearing, the first 2 weeks that we were there about all these violent protests that were going on in the north. And we drove up north, and it was all fine. It was very peaceful. We talked to some of the missionaries there, and he's like, yeah, I couldn't leave my house for 2 weeks. They blockaded the bridge on one side, and they cut down a billboard on the other and welded it across the highway. we couldn't get anywhere. But the 2 weeks that I was there, perfectly peaceful, no problem at all. We had a great time. We got to do all the things that we wanted to do. We didn't have to worry about anything. And then when we left, the protests started again. The entire time, God was just had this little bubble of protection around us as we went around the country of Honduras. And God is in control, and nothing's going to happen to you that He doesn't want to happen to you. That isn't in His plan, right? So crime can be concerning, but bringing the gospel to Honduras will help reduce the crime. So that's my thoughts on that. Now we will get into the ministry. The Hodges. Nueva Vida Bautista, New Life Baptist Ministries, was started by Sam and Julie Hodges in the late 90s. This is Sam and Julie over here. Sam is a good old boy from Kentucky, and Julie is from Singapore. They met at Pensacola Christian College and decided that they were going to be missionaries, and they studied Spanish, went to Honduras, and started Iglesia Nueva Vida Bautista. The word order in Spanish is like Church Life New Baptist, but New Life Baptist Church. Anyways, for all us English speakers, they started the church, and God laid it on Sam's heart to just invest himself in that one church. At the time, he said a lot of missionaries were going around planting lots of little churches everywhere, and he felt like God wanted him to just invest long-term in this one ministry. And today, there is not just the church. They have a very large Christian school for that area. They have a seminary, and they're working on an orphanage. God just granted them an 80-acre orphanage. There was a Korean ministry group that had an orphanage, and the missionary that they had there was there for a long time and just really didn't handle things quite well. And they're like, you know what, we know that there might be some doctrinal differences between you and us, but you've got the gospel straight, so we'll give you the orphanage. And they gave an orphanage to the Nueva Vida Bautista Ministries. So they have the church, Christian school, seminary, and they're working on the orphanage. It was really fallen apart at the time that they got it, and they're working on bringing it back into a working order. But Sam and Julie's son, Joseph Hodges, and his wife, Abby, here on the right, they are also missionaries to Honduras. Joseph and I went to school together. Joseph is the one who invited me to Honduras for those 2 trips that I took there. He was definitely one of my best friends in college, and he has a real heart for the Lord. He came to Pensacola. He's like, I'm going back to Honduras. I'm gonna continue helping. He wants to continue helping his father with the ministry there, and in progressing the church, the school, and the seminary, and the orphanage. And they went on deputation, and in less than a year, they had all of the support they needed. If you know anything about missionaries, 2 years is the minimum, right? Typically, you need at least 2 years. Some people are 5 years or even more on deputation, trying to raise the support to go on the mission field. He had it in less than a year. God really blessed them, and they're very active in the ministry there. Sam and Julie's oldest daughter, Selena, and her husband, Luke, they're currently on deputation with plans to go to Africa. And their youngest daughter, Brooklyn, is returning to Honduras to work as a teacher at the Christian school, and I think she wants to help with the orphanage. So those are the missionaries that we will be working with. They're very experienced. They've very well established in the area. They've got a real good, they're very organized. They have a system going, and they're very effective as a result. So the ministries of New Life Baptist, just as I mentioned, there are three main ministries: the church, the school, and the seminary, and then they're working on developing the orphanage. This is their compound. So over here you would have the church, over here is the school, this is the seminary, and this is the dorm, and then they've got housing for some of their teachers that live there on site. Very nice compound. The Lord bless them. It was on the side of a hill and a little bit out of town, and nobody wanted it, and so they got a really good price on it. And the Lord has been working in that fairly large section of plot of land that they have there, and it's very secure, very nice setup that they have there. I don't know if we will be staying there or somewhere else. They have a few other properties that they house people on as well. But the compound itself is a great place to be. The church is, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of disparity in Honduras. There's definitely a lot of class distinction. Here in America, we don't have the same level of class distinction anymore. But in Honduras, it's very clear: upper class, middle class, lower class. And there are a lot of people in the lower class. And the ministry of the church really does a good job of reaching out to people in that lower class, the poorest people of Honduras. They're very attracted to the ministry of the church, and the church purposefully reaches out to them. They're very receptive. And so most of the people who attend the church come from the poorest section, the poorest stratus of Honduran culture. There are some middle-class members of the church, but the church, it has a great children's ministry. They will easily have like 60 to 80 kids on a Sunday. 40 is a low day, 80 would be a big day, but they average probably 60 kids every Sunday. So that's like having VBS every single Sunday. Working with that seminary, because they've got that seminary, they've got people on site who can help out with all of the Sunday school classes that they do, and they have a great outreach to children especially, and helping those in the lower classes of Honduras. And there's a fairly good mixture of men and women in the church, and the church has a very successful bus ministry. The Hodges, they bus people in from many of the surrounding areas, many of the surrounding villages. They start their Sunday very early, driving these buses out. They send out bus workers to do routes through the village, because there's so many places in Honduras you can't drive to. So they park the bus in a central location. They'll send out their workers to go knock on doors and collect children, and good morning, will you send your kid to church with us? And it's a very informal culture. Yeah, take my kids to church. Never seen you before, but glad to get rid of them for a couple hours. And they'll do their routes. They come back to the bus, load all the kids on the bus, and whoever else wants to come. And bus everybody to the church, and they'll have 150 to 200 people on a Sunday, and the Lord really blesses them through their bus ministry, and so the church does a really good job of reaching that lower class of Hondurans, the disenfranchised, the forgotten peoples, but also their ministry, the New Life Christian School, is a way has proved to be an effective way to reach middle-class Hondurans. Middle-class Hondurans who won't step in a church that's full of low-class Hondurans want to send their kids to a private school, a private bilingual school run by Americans. It's a prestige thing. They want their kids to have a good quality education, private education, learn English, and so they get a lot of people, Catholic people who they want their kids to have a good education. This is the closest private school, and it's also very affordable, considering the costs of private school. And so that a lot of kids from the middle class strata of the society end up coming to this to their Christian school, and through those kids they're able to minister to all the families. Many kids come to Christ through the ministry. They use the Abeka curriculum, which many of you are probably familiar with, produced by Pensacola Christian College, and it's very good, solid Christian curriculum. They do all the elementary grades. They don't offer high school, but it's just a really good ministry. They're really able to reach many people to Christ, and they've been able to bring families into the church through the school. And so it's just been an effective way for them to reach a different segment of the people there in Honduras. They also have the seminary, New Life Baptist Seminary. The Hodges opened the seminary a few years before I first went there. They've had dozens of graduates since then. It's just a way for people who are interested in ministry, Hondurans who are interested in ministry, but they don't have a good education, or they don't have money to go to a real school. They can come to the seminary. They work for the church. They work for the school. They do a lot of work there on site, and in turn, the Pastor Hodges and a few other people that he has on staff there are able to train them in the Bible. They offer a Bible certificate, and they take men and women just to train pastors, pastors' wives, and Sunday school teachers. And it's been very effective. They've been able to take people from all over Honduras, train them in the Bible, give them a good, solid biblical foundation, and without them having to go to another country or to America and spend lots of money. And they're able to go back to their churches and be an asset. They go home and they plug themselves in, and some of them are pastors in churches. Many of them, they go home and they become the youth leader or a Sunday school teacher. And it's just been an excellent ministry for them to take teaching the teaching of the gospel to the next level, right? Because part of that is teaching them, instructing them in the things that we've been instructed in, right? But it brings their biblical education to a newer level where they don't have to rely on foreign missionaries to teach them everything. They are qualified to teach each other. And so it's just been a really good ministry for them there at the seminary. They've had lots of graduates. Here, I think this was most of the class that they had at the time. I think their numbers are supposed to be bigger at this point now. I think they've got between 20 and 30 people who are attending the seminary. And so that is Honduras and the ministry that is there. And then what are our opportunities if we go down there? Well, building projects. There's always something to be built on the compound. When I was there, they have dozens of retaining walls because, like I said, it's mountainous, it's all up and down, and whenever they try to build a flat area, they have to build a new retaining wall. And so I spent many hours building retaining walls. That's not the only thing to do there, but there's construction. There's a lot of evangelistic opportunities. Because Hondurans are very open, they will take anything that you hand them, right? You don't even have to know Spanish to hand out tracts. You can take a stack of tracts and walk down the street and hand it to whoever, and pretty much everybody will take one. And they'll take it home and they'll read it too. A lot of the door knocking and canvassing and handing out tracts, considered a little old-fashioned and looked down on here in America, still very effective in Honduras. So it's great because you don't need to know Spanish to hand out a tract. If you know Spanish, you can share the gospel with them. Here, we were just wandering around and just wandering through the foothills of Honduras, all those places that you can't drive to, that you have to walk to. And there's this group of people sitting outside their house. They had nothing to do. And Marco, who's there, he's like, hey, can I share the gospel with you? And they're like, sure. And so he just opens his Bible, and he's one of their seminary graduates, and he starts preaching to them. And they all sit there and listen and nod their heads, and when he was finished, he answers all of their questions, and we moved on to the next place. And it was just more of that. They were just very open to hear whatever you had to say. And people, because they're very empty, they're very needy, they want something that can help them. And so they tend to be very open to the gospel, to whatever you have to share with them. So there's lots of ministry opportunities as far as evangelism, as far as construction. There's also the school. When I was there one day, Mrs. Hodges has a way of telling you what you're going to do, and there's no way to argue about it. She tells you, and you have to do it now. And she says, one of our teachers was supposed to fly in today, but their plane was delayed and they won't be here tomorrow, so I need you to substitute teach for me in one of the classes. It's like, what? I was a sophomore in college, and I did not, I needed plenty of teaching myself. I had zero qualification. I had never done any real public speaking outside of my public speaking class, which I barely passed. And you want me to go in and teach these kids science? And she's like, yeah, I think the lesson is out of the science. It's a science class. The lesson is on glaciers. You're from Alaska. This should be great for you. Okay. So I went in there and I taught a class. And you know what? It was a lot of fun. I actually enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. I thought I would hate teaching little children, teaching anybody, getting up in public and speaking and things. Now I do it for a living. I get up and talk to, not necessarily children, but but I get up in front of people and speak and teach all the time. And that was actually one of those moments where I was pushed out of my comfort zone, did something that I didn't want to do, but I couldn't argue about it, and found out I actually liked it when I thought I would hate something like that. And so mission trips have a way of doing that. They take you out of your normal sphere, and they put you into a rather intense situation and get you out of your comfort zone and get you to try new things, new foods, meet new people, speak new languages, take on new activities like teaching and like sharing the gospel that you wouldn't have thought you would have felt comfortable doing, but you find out it's not so bad. Maybe you actually like it after all. Mission trips have a way of changing people, and I think many of you have probably heard testimonies to that sort of line. So evangelistic opportunities, the public schools are very open, unlike here in America where you can go in and you can sort of teach them, but you can't initiate conversations about the gospel. They have to come to you. You can answer questions, but you can't ask them. All sorts of rules about extracurricular. It's an extracurricular activity and things like that. Now, Honduran schools, I wasn't there during the public school season, but I heard a lot about their ministry to public schools. They'll let you come in and share the gospel right in class, and it's a great opportunity to reach people who, spiritual things never cross their mind. They don't go to church, they don't hear spiritual things, and there you have an opportunity to interrupt their regular pattern and share the gospel and force them to think about spiritual things and ask spiritual questions. And so there's ministries there for their Christian school, but there's also ministry to the public school as well. And then there's just plain old Christian fellowship. The people there just love seeing you. They love the fact that somebody in America, that wealthy wonderland that they all dream of going to, would leave that paradise and come to this miserable place to meet them and talk to them and share the gospel with them. It's an encouragement to the Honduran Christians and the Honduran people, just that Americans would come there to help out. It really touches their heart. And there's a great camaraderie. Like I said, they are very accepting. You show up and you're already a superstar. You don't have to do anything. And they love you. They want to talk to you. They want to include you. Even if you can't communicate with them, they just love to meet Americans. And it's an encouragement to them, and it's an encouragement to you to see that kind of a reception, to realize that you are part of something bigger than just your local church, but that there is this greater body of believers that you are a part of, and that you can go to a foreign country where you don't speak the language and you don't know the culture and you feel a little bit awkward and out of place, and yet you find acceptance based off of the one thing you have in common, which is your faith. And it's just really, it's an encouraging experience for them, and it's an encouraging experience for yourself. And that was all I had to share with you guys about Honduras. Are there any questions? Is that taken in Honduras? Yes, that was out the back window. I can't remember if that was sunrise or sunset, but yeah, I took that with my iPhone and was quite pleased with how it turned out. But yes, it's a very beautiful country. Any other questions? Yes, Sam.
Not necessarily a question, I just found it interesting in the last day or two, it was in the international news that Honduras has established diplomatic relationships with China and formally cut ties with Taiwan. So, not that that necessarily means anything momentous, but it does indicate that the government of Honduras is becoming more friendly with the communist government. So it's good that we're planning this to have whatever measure of impact God would have us to have while the war is over.
Yes.
It might change in the future.
It might change in the future, and it's unfortunate that politics change the relationships of smaller people, right? But realistically, America's a lot closer to Honduras than China is, and I don't expect and America does a lot for Honduras. And although there's this friction, I can't see anytime soon Honduras cutting ties with America just because of how much America does for Honduras. But yes, it's unfortunate to see things like that. Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
Is there need for help down there with in the orphanage? No, I get that here.
I'm not sure where they're at. They've been talking about it. I know that they received the property, and they've just simply been very busy with the other ministries that they're doing to put the time into it that they want to. That's one of the things I'm hoping to find out when we go there, is how far along they're coming with that. I know it's something, Mrs. Hodges, when I was there the first time, Julie told me, she says, I have always wanted an orphanage, and I know God will give us one. And God has given them one, so I expect they will do something with it. I don't know if they're doing anything with it at the moment, just because of how they're busy with their other ministries. So, yes? No, you don't. They do require that you either be tested or vaccinated for COVID before you go. But it's 72 hours before you leave. You'll have to take a test if you don't have the vaccine. I've been told that they're still very cautious about the virus. I know that Joseph had told me that the Hondurans took it very seriously. And even today, if you go into the grocery store, you have to wear a mask. But it's, still, yes, they're a little bit behind us, but we were there a few months ago too. So, it's, but aside from that, like malaria shots or anything like that, no. You just need to have a valid passport that will still be valid for 6 months after you return, is the rule. So those are the only requirements for entry. Unless
Malaria is free there.
what?
Malaria is free.
Yes. Yes.
In the process of time, will we have another meeting where you'll be able to share with us the type of clothing that is necessary? So we're not taking extra stuff that we don't need and those types of things?
Absolutely, yeah. So the application period is through the end of April, and once we have all the applications in, then we'll get you prepared for the trip. We'll have try to have regular meetings. I'm going to try to set up a Skype meeting with the missionary so we can get to know them and get to hear what their expectations for us are, and we'll go through all of those things before you leave, so you don't just like do what I did and throw random things into a bag and show up there with no clue what to expect. Joseph. Anyways, 2 guys in a dorm don't discuss all the fine details of a trip. It's just, do you want to go to Honduras? Yeah, sure. I got nothing else going on. So that was how that happened. Anyways, but we will be more detailed and informative than that. Any other thoughts? Any questions? Yes?
Are there probably neighboring missions that would have clinics and things like that? If they're more focused on helping people with education and things, probably other missionaries that have clinics that...
Yes, yeah, there's a large missionary presence in Honduras, and I know of a medical clinic there, a Christian medical missionary clinic there. We didn't get to participate in that there, but we did get to go to another missionary up in the north who was, he had established a church and was working on towards a Christian school and things like that. So we were able to work in multiple ministries. As far as they're at the Hodges ministry, they've thought about doing medical ministry, but it just wasn't something that fell together for them. Because I was there twice for a month each time, they would just randomly drop me off places and say, how about here? They took me to the local clinic, the government clinic, and said, here, how about you just help out at the clinic for a day? Okay. So I went, that was my second trip there. The first trip, they were a lot more cautious with me. And for planned trips, they have a lot more planning than that. But my second time going there, they're like, oh, we know you, we can do everything. Anyway, but if that's something that you want and can tell them ahead of time that I would like to try, if there's a possibility, then they will make it happen. I know that they will be formulating a plan for us to keep us busy throughout the time and keep us on schedule. Mine was a little more haphazard because I was one guy who showed up on Christmas break. And so if they ran out of things for me to do, they just plugged me in somewhere else. But I know they want to, they have a very organized group way of handling groups. So, but yes, yeah, there. Anyways, I'm sorry. Did I tell you what you wanted to know? Okay. Any other thoughts or questions? Yes.
So to piggyback that question, they're open to you, the Hondurans are open to you working in their local clinics or something?
Yes. Yeah, that happened because Philip was with us and he was studying medicine and wanted to help out in a clinic. And they're like, well, we'll drop you off at the local clinic for the day. But yes, the Hondurans are very open to you helping out. Philip told them, yeah, I'm a CNA, and they had no clue what that was. They figured he was a nurse, and they were ready to let him give shots to everybody. So they're very, very open to you participating and helping out. Anyway. Any other thoughts? Any other questions? I hope that this has helped more than it's hurt. So no, I hope that this trip or this presentation is giving you an idea of what Honduras is like, what the mission is there is like, and what the opportunities are like. Hajis are great people. They're very organized and very on point with their groups, and I know that they will keep us busy. Amen. Yes, sir.
Well done.
Okay, well, praise the Lord. So, alrighty. Well, we have gone way longer than what I thought, but I hope you enjoyed it anyways. Let's see. Brother Booker, if you would close us out this evening in prayer.
Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunities to learn. We were leading throughout the years, giving Pastor Jake the opportunity to serve. Thank you for the testimony of what you're doing in Honduras. Sounds like you provided an open door and an opportunity. Just ask for the Holy Spirit to give direction, grace, provisions, that you would direct specific people, individuals here in this fellowship to be able to go and serve and honor you, be a witness, be a precedent. That you would use it for good for the people there in Honduras, benefit the blessed believers there, and Jesus Christ for those who have not heard. And also, Lord, we just ask for your Spirit to stir up within each one of us passion and love that you have for those who don't